In this podcast, we chat about the draw against Swansea, look ahead at Cardiff, we chat to the YYY Files to get some insight on Boro's final home league game of the season against Stoke, and of course, we answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown Podcast, and this is all your Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the try. Goal!
Ravanelli coming alive again. Juninho wants the ball played to him. Ravanelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown Podcast with Johnny, Dana and Tom. We're the Boro Podcast that gives you all of your Boro Matchday Chatter in a podcast. And this week, Boro travelled to the Liberty Stadium to draw 1-1 against Swansea City. A goal from Riley McGree and a hatful of chances weren't enough for Boro to get all 3 points. Guys, Easter has came and gone, so back to normality for me. How are you feeling after that? Dana, do you want to go first?
Yeah, a little bit caught in between, I suppose, because it's a strange situation where Boro are definitely not mathematically out of the playoff hunt, but it did feel like yesterday was a little bit of a missed opportunity. But one thing is for sure, there's absolutely no room for error the last 3 games that we have. Of course, we do have that game in hand, which I'm not going to fall into the trap of one of my pet peeves and say that, that's almost a given, like a little safety net of a game. But yeah, it is a big opportunity and Boro simply cannot slip up now.
We've got games done. Tom, how are you feeling? Obviously, big night last night as well, watching the fight too. So how are you feeling first and foremost, but then also how are you feeling about the Boro?
I mean, I feel like I've been hit by a train this morning, mate, I'll be honest. Still in flares as of 8 hours ago. So, yeah. But no, the Boro match I thought was all right yesterday. The first half, I was shocked at the halftime stats in they'd had 81% possession. Because honestly, it didn't feel like that, watching it. But yeah, apparently I was watching it back, but then second half is basketball game, so end to end. There was a 2-minute period where we both hit the crossbar. It was just reminiscent of that playoff final. I think it was a little bit of a missed opportunity with the chances that we had. But I don't know. It's just because I felt like last week the season had kind of finished for us. I was still a bit meh about it, really. Kind of already looking ahead to next season. But I mean, obviously, as Dan said, it's still not mathematically over. No room for error in the last 3 games. Hopefully, we win all 3, and then who knows what can happen. But yeah, we're relying on others now. But I didn't think it was too bad of a display yesterday, really.
Yeah, it's if buts and maybes now, but like we were saying, it's still mathematically possible. 3 wins can maybe get you that position, but who knows? I think for me, I came away from that game thinking, God, how did we not win? But then also, how did we not lose that game? It was such a bizarre game of football. The amount of chances that we had were incredible, and we were lucky at times to probably stay in it as well. But let's chat about the game then, because Chris Wilder made one change to the side that lost to Hull, with Joshy Coburn going in up front for Andras Sporra, and Martin Piero returned onto the bench. But Dana, how would you assess that performance against Swansea?
It was a tale of 2 halves, wasn't it? I mean, the first half, you can definitely file that in the category of 45 minutes of my life that I'll never get back. But I wasn't mad at how it kind of played out. I think Riley McGree said after the game that he thought we could have been better in the press, and I definitely agree with that. We were somewhat more conservative than I expected, but we know what Swansea are like. They're exactly the same. At the Riverside in the reverse fixture, they will break through the press and they will make you wear yourselves thin. And Boro got to half time without conceding, and they have 2 very good players up front in Joel Perrault and Michael Obafemi. I mean, 80% possession at half time. They didn't really do too much with it, which was good. but let's be honest, it was boring. The second half, I think we came out the traps a lot more. I think we pushed Housen onto Grimes. He was dictating the play from deep, as he was in the reverse fixture as well. And I think we were more aggressive in our press, but it did leave us a little bit exposed. I think that's why we had that basketball game, as Tom said. It very much had that sort of backdrop to it. And we were a little bit messy at times at the back. It was like I don't know, there were just so many holes in our defence. We were like a crumpet, but much better in terms of creativity. We just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net as per usual. And yeah, it was weird, wasn't it? Because we scored, then they scored, then we hit the crossbar, then they hit the crossbar. It was like whatever you could do, we could do as well. It was very strange, but yeah, it came to life in the second half. We just, as per usual, typical Boro, we couldn't put the ball in the back of the net when it really mattered. In the end, though, to be fair, I think it was a fair result given the chances that we had and then the chances that they had as well.
Boro crumpets, handshake halls. I think with that performance as well, then I think you're absolutely spot on. I think it was topsy turvy in that second half, and the possession. We've always said in this podcast, although you can have as much possession as what you want, but it's what you do with it. But Tom, it was a different test for us because we're not really used to sides playing with that much possession and trying to wear a team down. For me, I think Swansea could have moved it a little bit quicker at times, but they didn't. But how do you think Boro coped? Because Dana said we've coped it quite well at times.
Yeah, I think we did. Went into this game expecting it to be tough. They're a good possession side. I think they're one of the best sides I've seen come to the Riverside this season. And that was a very difficult game when they did. And obviously yesterday was a slightly different challenge than having the home advantage. But I did think we coped with it well. What Dan said about Ryan McGreeson, and we should have been kind of more aggressive in the press. I do kind of agree that we could have been at times, but all that was going through my mind when they were having so much possession of the ball was kind of the old Barcelona kind of philosophy of like move the ball, wear the other team down, and then break them down. So I was like, I don't want us to go kind of over the top with it. But I think obviously there were times where we should have pressed a little bit more, but on overall balance, I think we did enough to kind of cope defensively with that. But yeah, I think we had to change it up in the second half because if it had kept up, kind of being very high possession on their side, that game probably would have only ended up one way.
Well, we did chop and change it in that second half, and we scored within a minute. Riley McGree with a deflected shot going at the top bins. But Tom, were you impressed by Boro with the way that they set up the traps throughout the afternoon, especially when a team likes to play off from the back? It's important that you do set them up and try to get them into a bit of false sense of security. Were you happy with the way that Boro helped them make a mistake?
Yeah, definitely. I always, I say always, since Wilder came in, I've enjoyed us playing against these other teams that actually like to try and play football and have this sort of style. And that trap for the goal was reminiscent for me of the one against Forest at the Riverside, where we kind of like forced the error and it ended up being an own goal. It was set up to be kind of like a really interesting game, kind of like a chess match in terms of the possession. As soon as McGree got hold of the ball, I thought he kept hold of it too long. I thought he should have shot a little bit sooner, and then obviously it helped off the bar on the way in. Hell of a first goal for him, but yeah, I think the possession trap was obviously instrumental in that. And like I say, I think with these teams that play possession style against us, I feel like we do fairly well against them. Setting that up so it makes it more difficult for them to play out from the back.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could have made it 2-0 within about a minute afterwards and end up going for drawing level because they went the other end and equalised. But then how were Swansea able to catch Boro out? Because it seemed like we should have been doubling our lead. Everything looked good, rosy. And the next thing you know, you level again. So are you disappointed in the way we've conceded that goal?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're on the attack. We win the ball back from not straight from kickoff, but shortly after it. We're on the attack, and there's a turnover possession. There's actually 3 key moments, I think. There's the save from Andy Fisher, Marcus Tavernier's shot. There's Howson's attempted tackle on Joel Perrault, and then there's Paddy McNair's sort of half press. Now, our defensive line, I can only assume that Bamba is about where he should be, but because of our advancing centre halves in obviously Paddy McNair and Anthony Dijksteel, they were on the attack. They're coming back from that. They're playing catch up, meaning that he's the deepest. But I just go back to Andy Fisher's save. I mean, obviously, I would have preferred Tav to have put this in the bottom corner or the top corner or just in the back of the net. But the way that it transpires, I would have preferred it if he'd have spooned it straight out of play, as we've kind of seen from Tav, because the way that it happens is that Andy Fisher saves down low with his knee, and it turns out to be quite a good but unintentional pass to Kyle Norton, and they work it around our defence. Now, this is probably what accelerates it. The tackle in the centre circle, Howson on Perrault, he kind of tries to swipe him, but misses. So it basically takes Howson out of the game, and Perrault already has a few yards on him to be able to pick out the pass to Michael Obafemi, who is already in space, because Paddy McNair seems to come out, but he doesn't really commit to the press. It's almost a half press. So he comes out, and what he does is he leaves quite a big space in behind him. And you'll see what Michael Obafemi does is he moves around the back of Bamba, but ends up finding that space in the area that McNair would have been in had he not kind of half committed to the press, shall we say. And he moves into that space. It's really good because he takes it inside Bamba. And this is a really good set of forward play, I think. He uses his strength and he's able to find that gap, if you like, to shoot. And obviously what happens. He puts it back where it came from and he scores. And I tell you what, for Michael Obafemi, I know we don't really talk too much about opposition players, but for him, I think watch out for him next season, because I would expect him to be right at the top of the goal scoring charts. I expect him to probably get around 20 goals next season. I think he's a very good striker, and we gave him that opportunity, unfortunately. And with strikers like him, he's going to take it. But yeah, really disappointing in those 3 moments where obviously Tav doesn't score. I think he should work the keeper a lot more than he does. Howson's kind of tackle, he is aggressive in it, but he just doesn't, he obviously doesn't win the ball back. He loses that duel. And then Paddy coming out to press doesn't really have the conviction in the press to fully commit to it, leaves the space in behind, which Michael Obafemi takes advantage of. It's really unfortunate. Obviously, we had just scored, so I mean, we were all excited that Riley McGree had scored, and then we conceded. But yeah, really disappointing.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that as well, I'm just going to quickly just bring the image back up. I think on the Femi here, like when I'm looking at his body, I think it's maybe the next image. His body shape here to try and get him behind. I think he's just got into that space between the centre halves of Bamba and Dijksteel, and I think where he's got into that space, he's pretty much pulled. I think pretty much pulled three out of our 4 defenders towards him, and it has created, like you were saying there, didn't it? It has created that gap, that little pocket of space from there. And they've punished us really. And I think it's such a poor goal to concede. I think given that we can be so defensively sound at times, and the way that a little simple movement off the ball is tearing like that centre half apart, I think it's quite disappointing. But it's a game that we can't really complain about, because we did have a lot of chances throughout that game. Within that second half, then I wanted to sort of like Tav. He's one. You've got Spara, you've got Dijksteel, you've got Connolly right at the end. Do you think why is finishing chances? Boro's still Achilles' heel.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, I think it's because we just don't have anyone in the squad that's clinical. I mean, Spara was a 1 in 3 striker, I think, in his career, which is fine. But sporting fans did warn us that he's quite erratic in front of goal. And then Connolly, 1 goal in 1,200 minutes is incredibly poor. We just don't have anyone. To be honest, the striker that's probably the most clinical out of the lot of them is Balogun, but he's only shown that clinical ruthlessness in the PL2 in under-23 competitions. So yeah, it's infuriating, isn't it, that this is just happening time and time again, that Boro can't seem to get somebody that you can really be confident in finishing their chances and converting them into goals. It's the golden question, really. But I think the answer to it this season is that we just don't have anybody that has that clinical kind of attribute in their game and have had that in their careers.
He's got a score there at the end, hasn't he, Tom? Connolly opens his ball. He takes it down lovely, opens his body up well, inside of the post and out. He's got a score, hasn't he?
It seemed to go in slow motion. Like, as soon as he got that ball, I only thought that was ending in a goal. And then as it's rolling towards the goal, just see it going further and further away from the inside of the post and heading towards the outside of it. I'm like, oh no, it's hitting the post. This is just going to roll out, and so that's what it did. You have to do better with those chances. But I mean, I can see what he tried to do in terms of placing it. It's just he's probably not got the best connection on it. I did think on first glance he was under quite a bit of pressure, and that might have forced a bit of an error on his shot. But on watching the replays, it didn't look like he was under too much pressure. So I think it's just I don't know, bad choice maybe, or
when his body shape is, he leans too far to his left hand side. So when he's done that, he's probably put it too wide. He's made his body too wide, and he's obviously put it in that direction. But then I think you didn't look too best pleased there when we were.
I was actually going to slightly disagree with Tom. I actually think Kyle Norton gets back and puts him off ever so slightly. I think he might even get a tiny touch on it. But yeah, I mean, he does everything right, doesn't he? It's a fantastic ball from McGree over the top. And then he takes it down really well. And to be honest, we've seen a few opportunities where strikers or Boro players in general have had the opportunity to take a good first touch and they haven't. And it's just completely trampling out of play or straight back to the opposition. But he does well to take it under his spell. But yeah, you should. I think any other striker in the Championship, or most other strikers in the Championship, I think would have the conviction to put that in the back of the net. It's I don't want to defend him too much because, to be honest, he's just not really been particularly effective for us since he's come in. So you don't really have the confidence anyway that you could put that in the back of the net, even if he didn't have that sort of touch from Kyle Norton. But yeah, it was just one of those, wasn't it? It did go in slow motion, hit the post, and that was the chance. It was the chance, and yeah, really, really frustrating that didn't go into the back of the net.
Okay, then, and last question before we move on to questions. Fair result draw, then? Yes or no, Tom?
Yeah, I'd say it was. Obviously, it's disappointing not to get a win, but when we were back in end of February and we're looking at the running, Bournemouth away and Swansea away were two games where I was thinking these are going to be really difficult for us, and we'll do well to come away from them, with a point. And we got 2 points from both games. In context, because we've lost all the home games around it, it's not been. We could have done with the 3 points a little bit more. It might be a little bit more disappointing in terms of the league, but had we won those home games, that would have been, hailed as a pretty good result. So, yeah, it was fair result yesterday. I'd say it's obviously not disappointing not to get the win, but I think we've done well to go there and get a point.
Okay, Dana, would you wholeheartedly agree?
Yeah, I think so. As I said, we had the chances; they had the chances. 1-1 probably a fair result. Yeah.
Okay, then that makes three of us then. But let's move on to questions then, because this is your chance to ask us questions on the podcast, and you can submit them via Twitter, email at theborobreakdown@hotmail.com, or you can join our Telegram chat, and that has over 170 Boro fans in there chatting everything about the Boro. And we also have separate chats in there if you want to talk about like sports or like Championship or whatever, or even the Wobbly Goblin.
If Matt Bowler is 6'1", which he absolutely isn't. But it was still a fantastic conversation nonetheless.
Yeah, it was. Is Mark Bowler 6'1"? Only Mark Bowler will know. So the first question of the day, and it's from Chris Coyle. And he says, we need to talk about how well Daniels has done since coming in for Lumley. Superb again today. Tom, would you agree? Has Daniels performed superbly well since he's came in?
I maybe stop a little bit short of saying superbly well, but I think he has done well. I think I had my doubts over him based on his spell in goal earlier in the season. Spoke about it on here before, where I was like, I maybe a bit hesitant about dropping Lumley, even with his bad form. But to be fair to Daniels, he's come in, he's looked a bit of a different keeper than he was earlier in the season, and whatever he's doing is working for him. So yeah, just hope there's more of that to come from him.
Okay, and the next question is from Michael Sullivan. It's via email. And he says, Zach Hemmings, we have a kid who is regularly playing well at Kilmarnock. Is he a candidate for first team keeper next season? 22-year-old and 15 clean sheets. I mean, I think with Boro being in the market and for a goalkeeper, he's got a full pre-season there. Who knows? But I think for a 22-year-old goalkeeper, you just need to start playing games. And can we guarantee that? I'm not too sure. But 15 clean sheets, winning that pretty much going to be going up with Kilmarnock this season. He's done superbly well for his first loan deal as well. Well, first big loan deal playing professionally, and I think let's see what happens, but I think it'd be quite unlikely. I think with Boro looking and really trying to force a hand in the market for a goalkeeper. The next question is from Pete Singh, and he says, "What has Balogun done wrong?" Obviously, Balogun hasn't been getting in the squad as of late in terms of the first 11, but he does have that best conversion ratio. Dana, what has Balogun done wrong?
God knows. I'd love to know the answer to that question as well, Pete. I think surely he must not be impressing in training. That's the only thing that I can really think of, because Chris Wilder wanted him at Sheffield United, I'm pretty sure. So he's been big on Balogun, and I would have thought he'd come on yesterday before Connolly and Sparrow, and he didn't come on at all, and that's really, really disappointing. He's still technically our most informed striker when it comes to goals per game, and it's disappointing that he's not getting a run in. I would like to see him alongside Coburn. I think it's either Coburn and Watmore or Coburn and Balogun for me. But yeah, I'd like to see him the next game. I really would. I like Balogun. Obviously, he's a young player. He's raw. He's absolutely not probably about even 20% the way to be in his full potential, but he's got something about him and I quite like him. So I'd like to see him, but I don't know what he's done wrong to not get into this team at the moment.
Yeah, I really like Balogun as well, Dana. Big advocate of him. I think he's a technically wonderful footballer. And he's going to be a very, very good footballer as well. I think if he has the game time to do that, you can see his talent in abundance. But again, just hasn't had that. Well, he has had opportunities at times, but I think the more he's played, I think the better he's starting to get as well. But let's see what he does. But I think he hasn't done anything wrong, in my opinion. But let's see if he can get in for Wednesday. Next question is from Danny Beermont. He says, "Who would you sacrifice and sell out of McNair, Fry, and Tav? Who would be more easily replaced?" Tom, do you want to take this one?
It's a difficult one, this. And I don't want to sound like I've just kind of got homegrown bias here, but I'd probably go with McNair out of the three of them. I don't think
I
you take.
agree.
I agree. No, I agree as well.
I don't think you take Tav out of that team or even sell him. I think he's really coming to his own since Wilder came in, and he's been playing on the left hand side of that midfield. I think he's really upped his game and added to it. Fry, we've seen what he can do in the especially in the FA Cup games where he's pocketed Ronaldo and Kane, and then unfortunately got bullied off Lukaku. But everyone's going to get bullied off Lukaku, so that's fine. I think McNair. We've spoke about it on here before, that at that left-sided centre-back role, we need to replace him there for next season anyway, with someone who's actually left-footed. And then you got him competing with Dijksteel on the right. I've said before, it does seem like he's kind of tailor-made for this system, overlapping centre-backs and such, but I do think you probably be able to find other options who can play the same role. Which I wouldn't say you couldn't for Fry and Tav. It's just I'd say they're better options in those positions than McNair is currently in his position.
I do agree with that, Tom, because I think Paddy McNair is not one of few overlapping centre halves in the EFL. He's one of quite a few. There's Harry Darling, Luke McNally. I mean, Oxford have a conveyor belt of overlapping centre halves. They've had Rob Atkinson. I think Luke McNally is definitely the next one, probably the one with with the biggest ceiling, I think, out of those three. Luke Wolfenden, Ronnie Edwards, Cal Naismith, Jack Watmore, Ross Sykes, Macaulay Gillespie, Jake Clark Salter, Lewis Motzmer. There's quite a few players in the EFL like that. And I think Paddy McNair's a good defender, but I don't think he's as good as everyone makes out to be. And that's probably my unpopular opinion, shelved right there. But and I certainly don't think that any player in this team is irreplaceable. But out of the three, I would say McNair as well.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. Even if you're saying it is an unpopular opinion, I bet he even likes cream eggs as well. That's how unpopular.
Well, it was, you know what, Tom? It was a bad opinion, and you've paid the price this week, especially in the Telegram chat. But I'd agree. I think McNair is probably more replaceable out of the three. We do need, I think, that left centre back nailed down for next season. And when we're looking at McNair in that position, it's not me saying that he's a bad footballer. I think McNair has a pivotal role in our team, and he still is a very, very good footballer, and I think he brings a lot to us. But that left centre back role, for me, if we're playing the style that we are, we need a left footer on that side. I think it's just when we're passing from side to side, and sometimes he always has to stop, put it on his right foot, and then move the ball. Those split seconds where it kills the tempo ever so slightly. I think there could be that marginal difference that we could potentially need. But McNair, look, he's a good player. Like, we might see him moving that centre defensive midfield role. He can either move at that right centre mid role if we were to, say, sell Crooks next season. He could potentially move there, or sell Pierre, like one of the two. You know, it'd be a replacement for that. So he's definitely got versatility in this game. But I think in terms of like replacing him, I think he's probably the easiest to replace. But speaking of replacements, our next question is on that theme because Matthew Rowney sends us a question of saying, let's say Spencer sold for 15 million. He was linked with Brentford as of yesterday for £15 million as well. Everyone's after Jed Spence, apart from Manjaro's, where he just wants Manjaro's. And he said, you've got 15 million and you're given all that money to reinvest. Who would you buy? We've compiled a list ourselves so we can break it down each. Who wants to go first? Dana, do you want to go first on this one?
Sure thing. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken about him a few times on this podcast, but Nathan Baxter, I mean, we need a goalkeeper. I think he's a very good all-round goalkeeper, good with his feet, good shot stopper, good at commanding his box, good distribution. I'm assuming he'll be available from Chelsea. Of course, he's on loan at Hull from them. Hull actually have two very good keepers in Matt Ingram and Nathan Baxter. Some clubs are lucky, I suppose, but I'd definitely bring him in. I've also mentioned Conor Grant on the podcast a few times. Left wing back from Plymouth, 7 goals, 4 assists this season. I feel like we need playmakers out wide, and he would be fantastic for that role. You can kind of see him maybe reuniting with Ryan Lowe at Plymouth though, at Preston though, so we'll see maybe where he goes, if Plymouth go up or not. But Kane Wilson as well, right wing back. He's out of contract in the summer, I believe. 3 goals and 13 assists this season. Again, tying into the playmaker role that I think we need on the wings. Collie Woodrow makes an appearance in all of our lists. I think it will be brilliant. He's a player I think should be at a club challenging for promotion and definitely not in League One. Playing as a second striker, he could play as a number 10 as well. So if we play with a 3-4-3 and we have a, like we've seen Sparrow in the Hall, I think Collie Woodrow would be fantastic with that in that position. Cameron Archer as well on loan. If he doesn't go back to Preston, I think he would be a brilliant signing, a clinical striker with a quite high ceiling as well. But also someone that played incredibly well against us this season that I probably should have mentioned maybe last week or the week before, but Carlton Morris of Barnsley. He's got 7 goals and 3 assists this season. Absolutely bullied our entire backline at Orkwell. And there's a tweet from Callum Cooper, who's the Barnsley co-commentator, and he says, Carlton Morris was already so influential, but he's got even better and he's vital to how we play. His pressing, ability to hold the ball up and technical abilities are top, and he's now showing great instincts in the box, a complete forward. And I think that's exactly what we need, a complete forward, somebody who can make the ball stick, sustain a bit of pressure, bring others into play, and is somewhat clinical in the box as well.
It's a good list, that, because there is some overlap in my list. But Tom, do you want to give yours?
Yeah, I mean, I've not spent that full 15 mil, so we're still set for January when we're looking off the pace and we need to strengthen again. But I'm starting off with Andy Rinomota from Reading. I've mentioned him on here before. Similar kind of stats wise to Johnny Howson, plays the same position, but obviously about 10 years younger. So we'll get a lot more kind of like long term from Rinomota. I'm doing a raid on Barnsley because they've gone down. So Cauley Woodrow and Callum Styles. Callum Styles to, well, I'd say provide competition for Bowler, but he could realistically be our starting left wing back. And Cauley Woodrow, as is on all our lists, we know why we'd want him up front. Liam Kelly from Motherwell as our goalkeeper. Good shot stopper, but extremely good at distribution, which I think is something that we're lacking at the moment. Malik Wilkes from Hull, and I'm also rating Hull as well because I'm going for Malik Wilkes and Jacob Greaves.
We are absolutely hammering the Football League, aren't we? So I thought I would go abroad with mine, but I think there is overlaps on mine. I think Nathan Baxter, Conor Grant, and Colin Woodrow all appear on mine. But the three other players that I've went for is Jamal Lowe at Bournemouth. I think with Bournemouth potentially going up, if they do go up, I think they'll look to invest in the forward line and could potentially become available. I think so. This is where I go abroad and go to my beloved Anderlecht in the Belgian league. I'm obviously a big follower of the Anderlecht, and I think Josh Cullen in centre defensive midfield would be a really, really good fit. I think the 26-year-old, he can play in centre defensive midfield and centre mid, and he's been really pivotal in the way that Anderlecht have played this year, especially on and off the ball. He really does dictate the play and is good at really, really good at interceptions. I think what we found since Vincent Kompany changed from like a 3 at the back to a 4, to a 4 at the back and went to a 4-4-2, it's just that Cullen's just been so influential in trying to be that holding midfielder and trying to get them playing and keeping possession. I think it's really pivotal in how they play. Then also a left centre half in Wesley Hoyt. He used to play for Southampton, and then he's also went to Anderlecht as well. Left foot centre half, really, really good on the ball. I think the only downside to him is he's a little bit slow. I wouldn't say like absolutely like got about 50 kilo on his back and he's walking and he's running, but he's a bit slower than a McNair, but I think his positional play is really, really solid. Premier League experience, and he's playing good football this year. And it's no surprise for me that Anderlecht have done very, very, very well this year, and hopefully I think they're playing this weekend in the playoffs for the title. So hopefully, fingers crossed, they can do that. And then that's kind of my list. I think I think it's a good list to have from all of us. I think Football League is probably the way to go for us. But if we can try and get those Wesley Hoyt and Cullen both, had English football experience too, I think it could be a good list. But either way, I think it's a really, really exciting summer for Middlesbrough, regardless of what division they're in. But our final question of the day is from Ian Smith, and he says, is falling short of top 6 a disaster? Could argue we've killed it for ourselves after the position we were in, but realistically, we didn't feel we'd need to even be in with a shout when Wilder came in. It's all about perspective. So is it the end of the world if we don't hit the top 6? Tom and Dan, I'll let you both take it, but Tom, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't think it's a disaster. So like Ian says, we were nowhere near it when Wilder came in. He's done a hell of a job to get us to where we are. It's obviously frustrating the fact that we've got ourselves into good positions and dropped out of it quite a few times, but that just seems like a very Boro thing to do. It's happened quite a lot over the years, hasn't it? So, I think it just means that we're probably able to rebuild next year and go again. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of improvements next season because of what we've had this season.
Dana?
Yeah, it's not a disaster, but it would feel like a missed opportunity because I feel like the Championship is incredibly poor quality this season. I mean, Luton have had God knows how many injuries and they're still up there. Huddersfield, I think even their fans could probably argue that they were maybe on for a lower half finish because of their recruitment. And I seem to remember there was a lot of discontent from the fans to the kind of chairman and the upper situation at Huddersfield. they've cemented their place in the top 6. I mean, Huddersfield and Nottingham Forest during their worst start in 108 years, and yet they're in the playoffs. It's just, I think that probably out of all of them epitomises how poor the Championship's been this season. I mean, of course, Steve Cooper's done a fantastic job, but I just feel like if there were better teams in the division this year, the Forest wouldn't be in there. And I think Forest fans might. I know I speak to Liam, who's a Forest fan. He probably agrees with that as well. But yeah, you look at the teams that are coming down or potentially coming down next season. Everton, I would expect them to be up there. Probably not Burnley, if I'm honest, if they go down. But then Norwich and Watford are usually up there, aren't they? So I'd expect them to be the same, yeah. And then Coventry, there's likes of Coventry, I'd expect them to be in the playoff mix. Preston potentially with Ryan Law, Swansea as well. Some good teams there next season. So I feel like if we miss out this campaign, it would be a massive opportunity squandered.
Yeah, and when you were saying there, Dan, about next season, like this Coventry side's a year older. They're a very, very young side. Under Mark Robinson, they're only going to get better. I think Swansea will look good next year. I agree with you. And Preston, they'll look probably to strengthen. They've got a really, really good manager there as well. And yeah, I think next year could be a really, really difficult season for Boro if they were to try and challenge. But it is about perspective. I think this year I think Ian was right. We probably weren't going to be in the playoff places. I think we all predicted that Boro would finish out of them, and we'd want improvement. We outgrew a manager. We've got a really good one in, and he's doing ever so well with what he's got. And he's not prone to mistakes or to people like saying that he could do things better. But I think we've got probably one of the best managers in the league now, a squad and potentially finances to really back us next year. And also we've got this project as well, which could be maybe 2 years down the line where we could see probably the fruits of it. But it's such a bright future for the club, a much more sustainable one, in a way that we're going to bring players in and try and sell them for profit rather than bringing a Rudy Gusted and waste a lot of cash. But let's move on to the praise and place now, because the praise and place is the place where we like to give praise to players, staff, dinosaurs, Easter eggs, you name it. We'll give
the
praise.
Dinosaur always worms its way into that little lead up, doesn't it?
It does.
Every time I think you're talking about Pulis.
It could be, you never know. But who gets your nomination for the praise and place this week? Appreciate last week we didn't have anyone appear in the praise and place. Dana, do you have a nomination this week?
I do, yeah. It's Riley McGree. I thought he was really good. I mean, there's been a few maybe criticisms of Riley McGree, which I don't quite understand, to be honest. He's shown in glimpses that he's got some good quality about him. I really like his technique, the way that sort of that he dinks the ball over for Connolly yesterday. I thought the technique of that pass was really good. Really want to see more of that. But he was excellent in the game. 3 key passes, the most in the Boro team, bettered only by Matt Grimes. Overall, I thought he was creating some opportunities, and he was probably unlucky that he didn't end the game with a goal and an assist at least. I thought he was really good in the game yesterday, and hopefully we could see more of that from Riley McGree.
Makes it 2 for me, Dana. Riley McGree for me was fantastic yesterday. Really good player. Really, really good player. I had mystified as well, Dana, around like the clamours for him after two or three games in a Boro shirt. Standard Boro fan behaviour at times. But I think he's a good player. We've picked him up for pennies, and he's going to be a talent for us for sure. Big fan of his. Tom, are you going to make it a hat trick, or are you going to go elsewhere?
I am. I agree with McGree. So
you were building up to that, weren't you? He was smirking in the background.
Yeah, literally as soon as you said McGree, I've just been thinking of that. But no, like Dan said, he was unlucky not to get an assist yesterday as well as a goal, and I think it's taken him a little while to get going again after his injury. I think he has maybe. I wouldn't say looked off the pace, because there's been players in the team who've been more guilty of that than him. But I don't know, he didn't kind of quite seem back to his best as he was kind of before. But yeah, I'd say yesterday was probably his best performance yet in a Boro top, and yeah, hopefully continues.
And I hope it continues for Wednesday because Boro welcome Steve Morrison's Bluebirds to the Riverside. A massive game for us with a game in hand, of course. Dana, we haven't got anyone to give us a Cardiff perspective this week, but who should we look out for?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I feel like they're in a little bit of a weird situation that obviously they're safe, excuse me, and they're experimenting a little bit. There was a youngster called Oliver Denham who played in defence in a 3-5-1-2 against Sheffield United that impressed. They've had Max Waters up front as well. They actually ended that Sheffield United game with an average age of 23. So excuse me, there's a lot of, I suppose, turnover from Cardiff. I would expect a bit of a rebuild for Steve Morrison. But you know what, I'll say Oliver Denham and Max Waters just because of their performances against Sheffield United. By all accounts, they were very good. But yeah, they're a side to look out for in terms of set pieces. We faced Huddersfield, who are the kings of set pieces 2 games ago. But according to Who Scored, Cardiff have scored 15 goals from set pieces this season, which is the joint 5th most. Boro, by the way, are on 9 this season. I don't know.
That's more like
I don't know where those 9 have come from, honestly. Our corners, we've scored 2 corners this season, I think. Bristol City and Preston. I remember that Preston game actually because I turned to Tom and I was like, bloody hell, we scored from a corner. And it was a really good corner that as well from Howson. But yeah, I kind of expect them to come to the Riverside and sit back, similar to the whole game. I looked at the possession that they had against teams challenging for the playoffs away from home, 46% against Sheffield United, which is actually a fairly big portion compared to 28% against QPR, 27% against Huddersfield, and 37% against Millwall. So I kind of expect it to be a turgid affair, much like what it was against Hull. But what I really want to see from Boro is if that happens, I want to see us move the ball quicker and maybe just take more shots. I know it sounds really simplistic, but you never know what happens. I think Dylan Phillips has got a mistake in him for sure in the Cardiff goal, but also it kind of makes players stick to the player that's shooting potentially and forces them to maybe close them down, leave gaps out wide. So we could potentially, I'd like to see that, but I feel like it will be a similar game to the Hull one.
I probably agree with you on that one. But just quick question, Tom, before I go, quick point out before you go your form, Tom. How outrageous are our set pieces been in the last few games, by the way? Alan Nill's been on that training ground and is developing some outrageous set pieces. There's runs at the front post, runs to the back. There's a bouncing ball somewhere. It's just I just don't know what we're doing, but it looks good. But
I swear we didn't move for one of them yesterday, though.
Yeah.
I swear no one moved. I like the ball came in, and I just said to my dad, "Did anyone literally move for that one?" Like I swear we didn't.
Just takes them by
piece.
surprise.
Yeah.
It's the thing they least expect.
Off like Ted Lasso at the end, like the two of the NFL set piece. Like that is like where I feel like we're going. It's just
I can't wait till we score a goal and celebrate by doing NSYNC bye.
Yeah. It's just under the radar. I feel like if there was Johnny's under the radar moment of the week, our set pieces are becoming that under the radar moment of the week. They're just outrageously, it's just daft. I don't know. But anyway, Tom, form, how are Cardiff performing?
Poorly. So they've only actually won. They've only actually won 1 in 5. So going back to the start of April, they got hammered off Swansea 4-0. Then went away to Reading, beat them 2-1. Then lost 2-1 away at Hull, 1-0 at home to Luton, and then lost yesterday 1-0 away at Sheffield United. But the interesting thing about the last couple of games against Luton and Sheffield United, they have more than held their own stats-wise. You look at the possession stats and from yesterday, they only had 45% possession. Like there wasn't too much difference in it. Sheffield United had 7 shots, Cardiff had 5. 4 were on target for Sheffield United, but 1 from Cardiff. And then looking back the game before that against Luton, Cardiff actually had 63% possession in that game and managed to lose 1-0. But outshot Luton 13-10 and had 3 shots on target each. So the form might be a little bit deceiving here because it looks like stats-wise they are actually playing okay. It's just they're probably just getting undone by bits of quality at the moment.
Okay, then. So with them being out of form, then Tom, but you've both said they can hold their own in terms of quality. What is your prediction?
You know what? I'm going to be really optimistic for this one and say 3-1. And I'm going to go that one goal for them is going to come from Jordan Hugill because he just loves a goal against us. But no, I think we finally ended our goalless streak yesterday, and I can just see us getting a big result out of one of the 2 home games before the end of the season, and I would think it's Cardiff more than Stoke, which is likely to be that game.
Okay, then Dana, what are you going to go for?
I think it'll be tight. I know we scored, but it wasn't massively deflective effort. I'm not sure if it had gone in
they all count
anywhere. They do, yeah. But I mean, we got a little bit of help there from Carl Norton. But I think it'll be tight. I'm probably going to go for a 1-0, and I'll take that. I'll take that every day of the week. 1-0 Boro, by the way, not Cardiff.
Okay, 1-0 Boro.
Hugill on goal.
Yes. Yeah.
A 3-1 for Tom. I'm going to go 2-0 Boro, I think we'll win 2-0.
Not much confidence in that one, Johnny.
John Hugill, double on goal. Okay, then. Well, let's move on to Boro's final home league game of the season, where they welcome Stoke City to the Riverside next Saturday. The Potters have had a mixed season under boss Michael O'Neill, but to find out a little bit more, we reached out to Ben from the YYY Files to give us a bit more insight.
Hey up, guys. My name's Ben. I'm from Stoke City podcast, the YYY Files. What am I saying about Stoke? Well, the last time we played, I think it was December, we were in 2 very different places. Stoke were in the playoffs, or at least around there anyway, from memory. And it would have been the start of our decline at that point. We've dropped, having a great start to the season, we've dropped well down in the table, well down to bottom half. And Michael O'Neill could have got sacked a few games ago. We've had a terrible run of form from around January to probably the majority of March. But then it seems to have all changed again. In the last 7 games, we won 5 of them. You can tell from my hoarse voice that I've attended a few of them. And we look a completely different side. I don't know what's happening. We're the form team in the division with 5 wins from 7, as I say. And we just find a way to win games. And it's just so frustrating considering that I think if we'd have won our recent games against Reading and Bristol City, which are, I think they were the other 2 games in those last 7, then we'd be within touching distance of the playoffs. Unfortunately, that's mathematically impossible now. But rather than a season of complete frustration, it'll be a season of what if we'd have won a couple of extra games. And that is Stoke City's season in a nutshell. We're probably going to come very close. But, of course, it sets us up nicely for next season, and we'll see how we get on in our last 2 games. We've got yourselves and Coventry. And it's interesting that in the last 4 games we played, I think, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th in the table. How we set up? So, to be honest, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I can't really say how Stoke set up game by game. We do seem to change it up. It's either a 4-2-3-1 or it's a 3-5-2, I guess, or something like that anyway. We seem to have opted for the 3-5-2 recently, and I think we'll stick with that. So you're likely to see Joe Bursick in goal, who's come back after a few games out, looking to prove himself ahead of next season. Probably Ben Wilmot, Phil Jagielka, who's approaching 40 years old, and Taylor Harwood-Bellis on loan for Manchester City. You got Tommy Smith and Josh Timon on either fullback. Then you've got Lewis Baker, who's been, an incredible signing, really. I think he scored 8 goals, and I think it's only Mitrovic who's scored more since Lewis Baker has signed for Stoke, which is unreal considering when you think that Mitrovic is a bit of a freak, really, isn't he? Joe Allen, who's approaching the end of his contract at Stoke. It'll be one of Mario Vrancic or Romain Sawyers. It seems to have been the latter in the last few games. And then it'll likely be Jacob Brown, and I don't know who else to partner him up from. Josh Maja, we've signed on loan from Bordeaux, and he's not scored many goals, but he seems to have been playing well. Stephen Fletcher's approaching the end of his contract. Tyrese Campbell was one of the best players in the division last season until he got injured. We've got a couple of loan strikers as well. We've got Jaden Philogene Badace, for example, and then actually we've got DiMaggio Wright-Phillips as well, who's had a bit of a breakthrough season, so it could be him. In terms of the players that I've just mentioned that you should look out for, I certainly think it's Lewis Baker that you should look out for. As I say, ridiculous goal statistics, and he seems to have been bossing the midfield too. He's finally given Joe Allen the partner that he needs after having a really torrid 6 years at Stoke, really, just through not having a capable defensive partner with him. Baker seems to be doing it at both ends of the pitch. So Lewis Baker for me has been our best player since January, even through our rough patch. Thoughts on our game then? Well, I think, again, if you'd have asked me about a month ago, I'd have said, this could be the game that Michael O'Neill gets sacked, or he'd have been sacked already. But like I say, we are the form team in the division now, and it's weird that I think that we're going to win both of our last games against yourselves and Coventry, and Stoke are going to have a really strong end to the season. We seem to be finding ways to win. You guys are faltering yourselves from what I've seen, not doing so well after such a resurgence under Chris Wilder as well. You wonder whether speculation from the Burnley job has affected things, but I think you guys have a chance of making it over the line still, so it'd be interesting to see how many promotion parties we disrupt this season. I think that's our aim now. That's our motivation anyway. So I'm going to go for a scrappy 1-0 Stoke win, because despite winning 5 of our last 7, that's what they've been. They've been relatively scrappy wins. And then we'll see how we go into the final game against Coventry, which will be, by all accounts, an exciting final day for everybody, as the playoff race is really tight, isn't it? But that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and
thank you very much, Ben. Saw 5 wins in 7. Former Boroloni Lewis Baker pulling the strings, and a good crop of players. Ben said YYY he thinks Stoke might win. Dana, what is your predictions for the game?
I'm gonna say 2-1 Boro, I think. I can't see us keeping the clean sheet for some reason, especially not 2 on the bounce. So yeah, I think 2-1 Boro.
2-1 Boro. Tom?
Well, I think we're going to be on a high after we smash Cardiff 3-1, so I'm going to go with 2-0 Boro. I'm going to go. I think it'll be scrappy. We'll have 1-0 lead, and then I think we'll get one last 5 minutes or something to make it 2-0.
Okay, I'm going to go with 1-0 Boro, and you never know, set up an exciting game for Preston on the final day of this season. But Boro do have a mountain to climb if they want to hit playoff peak. Guys, thank you very much for joining me as always, and thank you very much for the listeners for listening. But this is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was like a Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod. Up the Boro Breakdown.